Hello everybody and welcome back to KXP. I was glad to see that the POV people took a step back from aggressively pursuing the milestones to work on getting a satellite up in space, and that was pretty cool to see. If you missed it, check out last Monday's episode. But today in KXP, we're going to kind of follow suit and get our own communications network up, but we're going to try to go for a 3-satellite system. But that will be a little bit later in the episode. First off, we're going to take a quick look at our missions. We've got 2 that we are going to do, and then 2 of these little tester missions that we're just using to get the part in advance. But we're going to want to do some more missions and try to get some milestones eventually. Not in today's episode. Today is actually going to be a little bit more of a simple. We're going to kind of just work on this remote tech contract to get 3 satellites up in orbit. We're going to need a satellite communications network if we're going to pursue the MUN, because we're going to need to be able to have full probe connection all the way out there. So I'd like to get multispectral scans done of the MUN and Kerbin. We're not going to go to Midmus. It wants us to scan Midmus, but I believe that's just a little too advanced for us right now. We have 98 science, and I do know the first thing I want to spend that in is the propulsion systems, and that's for the Terrier liquid fuel engine. Separatrons too are pretty nice, but we're going to want that in order to more efficiently get into orbit. However, we're also going to want the lifting engines that are also 90 science. So we're going to build a quick little science rover, kind of inspired by the POV science rover, but extended out since we have the money that they didn't. But we're going to put a command seat on here at first, but eventually we're going to switch it out. But the main idea is that we're going to have enough experiments on here to visit nearly every biome on the KSC, the launch pad, the crawlerway, the VAB, tracking station, etc. All the different places at the KSC, we're going to collect every piece of science we can. So we're going to start off with a science junior and a thermometer, followed by a mystery goo containment unit. We're going to put a press mat barometer on there as well. And then in command and control, there's the science experiment called the onboard camera. Grab that. And then lastly, we are going to put on a magnetometer boom right there in that free space once I find it. There we go. And then that is all the science we can do. We're going to grab this pickup unit, but we're not actually going to need that. So let's go ahead and copy that. And then we'll take the 2 of those and copy it again. And one more time to get 6 biomes worth. There's actually more than that, but we already collected some of the science from the runway. I don't know that we've collected all of it, but we're only going to make it 6. I didn't want to deal with too unwieldy of a craft. I didn't want it too long. But 6 should be enough to gather all the remaining science we need. I'm switching out from the seat because we're going to need to take crew reports, and in order to store them up, we're going to actually have to remove the crew report from the seat, so it just wasn't going to work. So I removed that in favor of a probe only controlled rover. But like I mentioned, we're going to want those crew reports, and in order to get that, we're going to need a Kerbal in the seat. So once we get all of our stuff on action groups, we'll work on getting a cockpit added to this as well. But I'm just putting each of these little sections on their own action groups, so that way I can just arrive at the destination I need to be at, and then activate the science. So yeah, I put this control unit back on, but we're not going to really use it. I do like how it looks though. Kind of covers that gap. This isn't meant to be the prettiest craft. It's just meant to be utilitarian, get what it needs done, and nothing more. I put those extra side wheels up on the top of the craft, kind of sticking out. They're not meant to touch the ground. They are solely just to keep our vehicle from tipping over. So there we go. I'd like to put some lights on it just because it's going to be an early morning science crawl, but alas, we don't have any available. So here we are on the launch pad. Tomini Kerman is ready to do all the science available. And let's just get started. So we get him out on EVA. We're going to have to take the data, do an EVA report, and then hop back into the cockpit. Alright, so we've got our first biome done. Let's go. I just want to take a moment as we drive around, just take a look at some of the lighting that from the deferred rendering mod. Like as we see the sun, when it peaks up a little bit later, we'll see the reflection off the back, off that gold foil engine right there. And we'll be able to see the shadows on the sides of the building looking really cool, and just the movement of the light in general. It was pretty awesome. Alright, with the VAB done, we are moving on to the tracking station, which once it's fully upgraded actually has even more biomes. Each one of those little satellite dishes becomes its own biome as well, so you can do even more science. Get back in our seat and be careful not to hit that. But check out the shadow right there as we come along. That's from the deferred lighting, or deferred rendering mod. And you can see the light source moves in the gold foil engine based on which direction it's coming from. It's just gorgeous. We are, if you may have missed the last video, we are going to be adding the new Firefly mod, the Re-entry Particle Effects mod by Mirage Dev. I think it's pretty awesome, and we tested it and it does work with our series, so we have no fear of messing up our progress. So I'm pretty excited about that. So that should be activated by the next episode. The next episode of KXP, not Monday's POV episode. That one has already been recorded, and it's a pretty interesting one, but we'll talk more about that later. But anyways, we're coming up to our last biome, which is the admin building, and we're just gonna bring ourselves there safely, do the science, and hopefully not scare Werner von Kerman too badly. But there we go. Tomini Kerman got his first mission done. I believe he's the scientist, so he got his first mission done, and coming on home, he recovered over 139 science, which will be plenty for us for what we need to do today. So pretty happy with that. We're not going to be able to do that again for a while because we've researched all the science that we have available, but once we have new experiments, we can grab a little extra from there. So just taking another quick look at our contracts, we can complete the two today, pulling a dish out from Kerbin, as well as the communications network of 3. But we are going to right now unlock this heavy rocketry, so we have a much better lifting vehicle going forward. There's quite a few things in general construction that I'd like. The struts being one, the radial decouplers being another, better fuel tanks. There's a lot of good stuff here. We're also going to want to get better planes soon, and of course a nice rover body would be nice. But ultimately, we can't spend any in the life support, which I really wish we could have. But ultimately we are going to go with gizmos here because it will give us better quality solar panels and communication dishes, which will be immediately useful. So we're going to do that. I am thinking about getting the Onion reentry pod. It's a pretty cheap Kerbal capsule, so we can potentially do some more advanced missions soon. But for now, let's go ahead and build our communication satellite. We're going to first prototype it, and then we're going to create a rocket that can contain 3 of them in an attempt to launch the whole network in a single launch and get it all situated. I'm glad we got the better solar panels because we now no longer have to rely on the static just side mounted panels. Now we can actually have rotating ones. That Gizmos tab also gave us access to those communication dishes, which have, I believe they're 50 millimeters, 50 millimeters, something like that. So this should be enough to communicate with the mud. I don't think it can get to mid-miss, but it will at least help us out when we're starting to send probes to the mud. This should be good enough. We check our ampere mod to see that we have enough battery to cover the dark side of Kerbin, and it seemed like we did. That's that little battery icon in the bottom. It's yellow right now. I put these lights on and absolutely forget to use them. It's funny. I didn't even notice it until I was editing that I'm like, oh, I put lights on this thing? But nonetheless, it's not too expensive for some lights, and they're not too heavy, so it doesn't make too big of a difference. But let's go ahead and put this into a sub-assembly because we're going to want 3 of them. I named it the ComSat V0.5. It's not quite a V1 yet because I think this will quickly be replaced by better technology and into a higher orbit, so our communications network that will last for a while is going to be better than this one, so I felt like giving it the half-point designation. So I didn't like the clipping of this, so we're now readjusting the communication dishes to be on that side. And since we don't need to power each satellite on its own, we can basically just get it into the orbit we want and then drop it off to let float with no power. So we're going to put the only one engine on the bottom of it, and that's just going to finalize our orbits. But this this Tundra engine, or the engine that comes in the Tundra mod where those fuel tank is from, is only the big size. So unfortunately we have this massive launch vehicle to take up this tiny little payload. So we're going to put a probe core in there, and hopefully we can recover some of the funds of this, and maybe like once we get ourselves into orbit, if we still have some fuel left over, we can deorbit it and get some of the money back. So we're going to put some parachutes on it, but according to our stage recovery mod, it may not be enough, but we will see when it comes down to that time. But for now, we are basically ready to get this out. We are going to do a simulation. We're going to make sure our stages are correct because they absolutely weren't. That would be bad to see in flight. I've done that before where you accidentally stage a center satellite and then leave 2 stranded in orbit. It's no good. So here we are in an early morning launch on the launch pad once again at the typical KSC. We are going to be taking advantage of the fact that we have such good communications with our KSC. The fact that POV is off in the desert somewhere, they're not really able to launch probes very well just because they have such a problem with not signal delay, but not actually having a line of sight on signal. So because of that, because we have the advantage of a working KSC radio tower, we're going to take advantage of that, and this is just going to be a probe launch only. Once again, we are using remote tech, so it is a little more complicated than in stock Kerbal, stock KerbNet, probe control, that sort of thing. But we can explain more of that along the way. I'm just fixated on the real plume, waterfall, which is making the engine plume. It just, on this Tundra rocket, it looks so cool. It's going to get even better later. But I love how the flames actually expand as you go higher up into the atmosphere. Very realistic. So we're going to tilt ourselves over a bit. Our apoapsis is going to be crossing the Kármán line soon. Still got 2,500 meters of delta V in our tank, so we should definitely be able to circularize on this lower lifting stage alone. Alright, our apoapsis is now passing 100. We're going to be shutting off pretty soon at 113 kilometers. We're going to go higher than that with our satellite orbit, but we're just going to circularize here, just get ourselves into a nice parking orbit, and then deal with the specifics of the orbit. I'm going to add a little bit higher of an apoapsis on here. Might as well burn all the fuel that we can. But at the last moment, I bring it down to 370 because I also don't want to I want to make sure that I don't bring the satellites out of range and that they can't communicate simply just because they're too far away. But thankfully, we still have signal to the KSC, so we're able to control all of this. We plotted in our circularization burn, and so even if we were to lose communication now, we're still going to be able to make it to orbit, so that's good. So we got a minute left until the burn. We're just going to tip over, get a nice view of the MUN. Excited to see it up close and personal. It'll be the first time we've seen the MUN since adding Parallax 2.0. And pretty excited about that. And with that, our engine kicks on, and this beautiful squarish orange plume. And it's pretty cool. You'll see when the maneuver ends, it actually kicks off a green hue right there at the end. Chemical reaction of the gases expelling. But I think they did a wonderful job on this, not just in the waterfall mod because of the colors, but just a lot of the Kerbal modding community in general. I was looking over the Firefly mod, and it's really cool to see that the colors... Wait, green. There we go. That's so cool. But yeah, the colors of the reentry effect are dependent on the chemical makeup of the atmosphere. So different planets will give you different colors and different reentry effects. I think that's really cool, and that it just speaks to the Kerbal modding community in a whole. Is just the fact of what kind of details and attention they pay, to the details. Excuse me. On these things to just make it so realistic, and sometimes you forget that this game is like over a decade old, but it just still looks so stunning. Anyways, let's go ahead and time warp our way to our maneuver to bring out our orbit into a higher parking orbit, which will be good enough for our communications network. Tiny little puff, and that's all it took. We only have 221 meters per second of delta V left, but that'll be enough to get ourselves into our looped orbit, into a highly elliptical one that will hopefully spread out the distance between this satellite and the next. It's cool to see that we still have signal, full control of our craft, which is nice. I honestly didn't expect that. The fact that we don't have any communication network up at the time, so it was really surprising to see that we've had connection this entire time. Alright, so we time warp our way to the other side of the planet, getting ourselves ready for our maneuver. And there we go, pushed down. I saw this orbiter debris, and for a second there, I thought it was part of this launch right here, so I was waiting to watch it burn up in the atmosphere. Only to see that it did not, and that's just because it was from our first orbiting craft. We came around the other side of the planet, and now we have signal with the KSC once more, so we're going to go ahead and plot in our maneuver to circularize once again. And then I'm going to have some problems here coming up, but I'll start to explain it. But this is the start of said problems. As you see here, we have 154 meters per second that we need to burn for our maneuver. Our lower stage, the Tundra engine, only has 71 meters per second, but our upper stage should have enough to handle it. But for some reason, it's not reading out, so I decided to kick off the secondary satellite in this highly elliptical orbit. It's not what I wanted. It's not even in the slightest, but there's a chance that we're going to have the last 2 satellites be stuck in the same position, so I wanted to at least spread it out a little bit to give myself a little bit better coverage when I can. But so now I'm going to take this last satellite and try to put it in a higher orbit than the rest of them, and we'll just split the difference between the 3, and hopefully at one point, at any given point, we'll have access to one of them. Very sloppy, but we don't have the technology right now to make it as even as possible. So here is the problem that I'm talking about. You see how I keep time warping and killing the time warp and all that? I don't know why it's auto throttling it. We have signal and we turned off that thing. As you see here in the flight computer, every time I try to cancel a command, it just adds it to the list and is continuing to fail. So I ran into a lot of bugs. Next time I log in, I may be able to fix it and control this craft, but for now, I'm just going to leave it dead in space because there's not really much we can do in the rest of this episode to kind of save it. It was sad to see that we didn't make any milestones today, and the main mission that we set out to do ended up not quite working out the way that we wanted. I am glad that we got the science now. We can now get into orbit much more easily, and so I think we'll be able to rectify that mistake soon. But I kind of want to get back onto the milestone bandwagon, and I think we may look at different programs in the next episode. Lastly, I do want to say that Monday's POV episode came out really well. I'm very excited. I believe that the humdrum of this episode will be made up by the interest of that one, so I hope you're looking forward to that. And I hope the KXP people will see what they have to compete with, and they'll come up with something good on the next one of this series. But anyways, that is where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more KXP. If you did, think about subscribing. Drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take care.